Hey Tommy, it's official. Electric vehicles have now kicked gasoline-powered vehicles to the curb.
Oof, Dad, I'm not sure I agree. No, you're wrong on that one.
In both, I'm going to say performance and value.
Ooh, once again, I think you're incorrect on that one, and in this video, we're going to talk about it.
All right, we're going to use two vehicles that I think prove my point. And these are two vehicles that one is for sale and one is going to be for sale very shortly. And they're both vehicles that completely have changed the game. Game changers, is the classic definition of a thing, or in this case, a vehicle that flips the current model on its head and changes the way that everybody thinks about things. And I think the two vehicles that exemplify that the best are the Tesla Model S Plaid and the new Hummer EV, whether it's a pickup truck or the SUV, it doesn't really matter, but they have both substantially and in an earth-shattering way changed the way that the world is heading.
Okay, can you explain that a little bit?
Well, okay, perfectly fair question. So let's start with the Tesla Model S Plaid, right? It is now the fastest accelerating car that you can buy. It will out-accelerate hypercars like the Bugatti Chiron, and it will do so at a fraction of the price. The numbers we're talking about are 0 to 60 in anywhere from, depending on where you look, 1.99 according to Tesla to 2.3 according to some publications, at a price of about 100, and I think they started at 115, 20,000, something like that.
Okay.
And those performance numbers will blow the doors off of any hypercar that costs not twice as much, not 3 times as much, but 5 times as much. Plus, Tommy, what makes it that incredible is that the car is a pussycat around the road. You can take this vehicle and you can take your grandma, my mom, to church with it on Sunday, and then you can take it to the drag strip and lay down a 9-second quarter-mile time with no fuss. The same car has this incredible bandwidth of being able to be an everyday, drive it to work, drive it to the supermarket car, and at the same time go to the racetrack and blow the doors off of almost any other vehicle out there, probably any vehicle out there.
So the first thing I want to say is it is an absolute screamer in a straight line. That is absolutely correct. In a straight line, this car will pretty much demolish any other vehicle on the road. But I'd also make the argument that if you are looking to buy a performance car, straight line performance is only a small part of the equation. Because keep in mind, a lot of people who are looking to buy a car that are extremely high performance also want it to sound incredible. They want the drama of a V8 or twin turbos or blow off. They want that kind of excitement that comes along with buying an expensive high performance vehicle like a BMW M5 or a supercar like a Lamborghini or Ferrari. And 0 to 60 is interesting, at least for a small amount of time, but it really isn't the full story.
They want the theater, you're saying?
Yeah.
I couldn't agree with you more on that, but that doesn't change the fact that this car, which is relatively affordable, now completely guts all internal combustion engine cars in its performance. And, the other people out there are probably screaming at me, what about range? Well, it also has a range of about 400 miles on a charge, and that is, more than most internal combustion engine cars get on a tank full of gas. So in terms of price, in terms of performance, in terms of, even reliability, because electric cars, of course, have a lot fewer moving parts, it just completely wipes the floor with its counterparts.
Not quite. Not quite, because I would argue a big part of performance is how usable is the car in a long trip. And yes, the range is impressive, and yes, it is very usable if you have a place to plug it in at home every single night. But if you are living, for example, in an apartment building where you don't have access to regular power and you have to continuously charge it up at a fast charger, you're going to be spending time waiting at a fast charger. And on a road trip, keep in mind that this car is going to be significantly slower point to point than a gasoline equivalent, because even though the supercharger network is incredible, it is still quite a bit slower than stopping at a gas station for a few minutes to fill up.
Yeah, you could nitpick things about the electric car experience.
I don't think that's nitpicking, Dad, keeping the thing charged. I think that's a very important part of the experience.
That's going to get better over time. Obviously, when the Model T came out, there weren't gas stations everywhere, but they were built out. The same thing's going to happen with electric cars.
I would make the argument that it's actually getting worse over time, because right now there are a huge number of fast chargers and a relatively small number of cars, but we've already seen instances where superchargers are at maximum capacity, or people are waiting a long time at Electrify America and charge point stations. So unless the infrastructure really picks up to meet the demand of EVs, I think we're going to be heading into some rocky time for public charging.
Well, I would say, this is a business opportunity for gas stations and for other individuals who, see the upside to electrification. The other thing I think that's important, and this is also important in the next car we're going to discuss, is that the Tesla Model S Plaid is the top halo car for Tesla, but you could go down the line and you can talk about the Model 3, the Model Y, the Model X, and they will also kick the butt of any of their ICE competitors. So it used to be that the BMW 3 Series was the benchmark for the longest time. As a car and driver fan, it was always a perennial top 10. But right now, if you were to ask most people, what would you rather have, a Model 3 or a 3 Series, most people are going to say a Model 3. It has now surpassed that benchmark because it offers so many advantages, not the least of which is it's much quicker.
I think that is mostly true, and once again, the acceleration is very impressive. But I recently, this past summer, got super into autocross, which is a test of performance driving and handling. And what I found pretty quickly is that from a handling standpoint, the number one enemy of anything is weight. And the reason that the fastest car at our autocross every single time pretty much was a slightly modified BRZ was because of the weight and the balance and the nimbleness of these vehicles. And I have a hard time believing that like a Model S Plaid would be good in an autocross or in a twisty track situation, because batteries are extremely heavy. And as Lotus used to say, simplify and add lightness. These cars are simple, but they certainly don't add lightness.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. That is so true. But the problem from a buyer point of view is that that's a use case scenario that most people don't really use, right?
Well, sure.
I mean, the track is not.
No, but keep in mind,
track is not something that. And you'd be absolutely right if the weight also was a detriment to a vehicle's performance. But the problem with electric cars, the next one we're going to talk about, is even heavier. I'm talking about the Hummer, right? That's GM hasn't announced it, but we're looking at 9,000 pounds, which is crazy, right? But if you build a 9,000 pound SUV or truck, and then you don't give it like 3x the amount of performance of its counterpart, then you're in trouble. But the problem is that these vehicles do have 3x the amount of performance of their counterparts.
So you're right, 0.0001% of people are actually going to take these vehicles to a track. But keep in mind that the same dynamic challenges you see on a track also apply to that beautiful twisty road that you might want to take on a Sunday afternoon, or might apply to that little bit of performance driving you want to do. And moving on to the Hummer, I would argue that 9,000 pounds is a detriment not only on-road in a twisty road situation, but off-road when you're rock crawling, when you're going through the desert. Weight is always a bad thing in any automobile, regardless of the performance envelope that you're benchmarking.
Well, just a few feet in front of our cameras here, we've got our long-term Ram TRX, right? And that is the first super truck, I think that's fair to say. And that will do 0 to 60 in about 4.5 seconds. It has about 10 inches of ground clearance. It's rolling on 35s. It tows 8,100 pounds. These are just some numbers, right? Mm-hmm. Now, I got to go to the Milford Proving Grounds in Detroit and drive the Hummer EV pickup. And this applies, this is on the car channel, so it also applies to the SUV. And yeah, it's very expensive, $112,000 for the first edition. But let's talk about those numbers, right? 0 to 60, not 4.5 seconds, but 3 seconds. Ground clearance, not 10 inches, but 16 inches. We don't know towing yet. We don't know payload, so we can't talk about those numbers. But I promise you that TRX, while it's incredibly capable, doesn't have 10 degrees of rear wheel steering. So yeah, the thing is, I said in the video, I think she's a heavy girl or he's a heavy boy, whichever one you like. And that's absolutely true. But there's also this incredible increase in performance at the same time, which once again puts most internal combustion engine vehicles to shame. And I am going to miss the exhaust note of that TRX because it puts a huge smile on my face. But at the same time, 0 to 60 in 3 seconds in a vehicle that weighs 9,000 pounds also puts a huge smile on my face.
Yeah, I mean, it is incredible. Once again, and I think I keep saying this like a broken record, the straight line performance is mind-boggling. But first of all, how many people are buying a truck for the 0 to 60 mile per hour time? I think that's pretty low on the requirements of a truck or SUV buyer. Second of all, in terms of off-road capability, even though the approaching or the ground clearance, all of that is incredibly stunning, I would argue that weight is a huge deal off-road as well. There's a reason that the Willys CJ2A, the old Jeep from the 1940s and 50s, and then of course you had the military models. The reason that they were so incredible out in inhospitable terrain is not because they had 1,000 horsepower, it's not because they had crazy four-wheel drive systems, it's because they weighed nothing and they had basic solid axles and you can point them up anything and they just kind of scamper. And that, I think, is a big problem with all of the big crops of EV trucks and SUVs. Now, in terms of towing, maybe that weight's going to be an advantage, but when you talk about towing, as we've learned with the Model X, there's huge detriment in range when discussing EVs. So I think that's another aspect where the truck and SUV thing kind of falls apart.
All right, well, let me ask you one question, and this is a vehicle that's for sale right now. You brought up towing. What mid-sized truck can tow 11,000 pounds?
Are you going to say the Rivian?
That's the one.
What mid-sized truck is $70,000?
The Gladiator Rubicon.
No, I'm sorry, Dad, but you can get a Ranger for under $30,000.
Of course, you can also get a Rivian cheaper. But the point here, Tommy, is, the weight is an issue. But I suspect that over time, the weight of these vehicles will come down, right, as batteries become lighter and more efficient. But just the sheer capability, I didn't want to talk about things like, I didn't want to bring all that baggage into it about like which one is better for the environment. There's a huge set of baggage there that we're not talking about. What I want to just talk about is the reason that electric cars are surpassing and have surpassed internal combustion cars is because their performance is just so much greater than the older technology. And when you live through this inflection point in history, it's hard to tell when exactly that point was where it went from like horses to internal combustion engine cars, right? When it went from the horse to the Mercedes-Benz. But I think we have officially now lived through that point where, whether people realize it or not, we are now in the electric car era. And it's not because necessarily it's greener, it's better. It's because they're just much more they just perform much better for a lot less money. And yes, right now we're looking at the very expensive ones, right? Like the Lucid Air, which has 500 miles of range. I will bet you that within the next 5 years, there will be an electric car that will have 1,000 miles of range.
Yeah, but once again, I don't think that they perform better for less money because all the vehicles we've discussed today are extremely expensive vehicles. The Model S over $100,000 in the Plaid version. Okay. The Hummer over $100,000.
Can I let me ask you one question then?
Right.
What do you think of the current generation of Minis?
I don't like the current generation of Minis.
What's the best one out of the bunch?
The electric one is the best one.
And is it affordable?
It is affordable. But let me ask you another question. This weekend, we have a very fun mini drive to the top of Pikes Peak, which is about, 150 miles from here. Which Mini are we going to take? Is it going to be one of our gas ones or one of our electric ones?
Given that our electric Mini only has 114 miles of range, we would certainly experience some range anxiety driving that loop because it's going to be more like 200 miles. So yes, there are limitations, but that doesn't negate the fact that it's still the best of the bunch, and give it a few years, that range is going to increase.
And I have no doubt that, for most people, if you're just commuting in your EV and you have a place to charge it up at home, buy one immediately. They are fantastic. But if you don't have a regular access to power where you sleep, if you have to rely on the public charging network, if you plan on using this vehicle for super long commutes and road trips, I still think that the gasoline counterparts perform better for most people. I mean, the EVs are getting there and they are incredible. And yes, 0 to 60, they will break your brain. But I still don't think that they have overtaken Dino Juice in a lot of ways.
Well, there you have it, guys. Am I wrong, or is Tommy right? Or is Tommy right and am I wrong? See how I did that?
Yeah, that was good. I like that.
Let us know in the comments below. We'd love to get your take. But I'm still going to be there, Tommy. I think, we are now firmly and officially in the electric car and truck era. Just you wait another year, and it won't even be a conversation anymore.
I think it will be, especially when people are stuck waiting at Chargers for an hour and a half while the person in front of them got lost in Target in the baby clothes section and forgot to move their car. We'll see you guys next time. Let us know what you think below.
Ciao.